Muammar Gaddafi is holding on to power, but just, it seems, by a very thin thread. Tonight, he's only in control of one major city, Tripoli, and opposition forces are moving closer to the capital every day. They now control Zawiya. It's just 50 kilometers away from Tripoli. Opposition forces have been moving steadily across northern Libya from the east. They haven't seized Gaddafi's hometown of Sirte or the capital, while the south is mostly uninhabited desert. This weekend, Gaddafi allowed a few foreign journalists into Tripoli. The CBC's Raymond St-Pierre was the only Canadian, but he had to hitch a ride on a flight chartered by Canadian engineering and construction firm SNC-Lavalin, which has been rushing its employees out of the country. After that, it was on to meet Gaddafi's eldest son.
As soon as we arrive at the Tripoli airport, we are told to hurry up. Saif al-Islam is waiting for us. But it is difficult to drive fast. Hundreds of people are waiting outside the airport. They've been there for days, desperately waiting to leave the country. Yesterday, TV crews were told they were not allowed to film these people. We are now told things are changing, that cameras are welcome. We first stop at a luxurious hotel where the few foreign journalists invited by the Libyan government to cover the conflict stay. This is where Saif al-Islam gave his last press conference on Friday. We are then driven to the Prime Minister's office, where we are told Saif al-Islam is chairing a war cabinet meeting. As soon as he comes to talk to us, he strongly denies any military attack against civilian installations.
So how can you believe that Libyan aircraft is attacking civilians?
When we tell him about the two Libyan pilots who landed in Malta because they said they did not want to attack civilians, he blames the media for that.
You know what? Because of the aggressive media campaign against us, as you know, it's so aggressive. They managed to influence everybody that we are attacking civilian targets.
And he claims everything is calm in Tripoli and in most parts of the country.
It's very important. That's why you are here.
Yeah.
We have no demonstrations. No people sitting in squares on the streets. And Tobruk is very calm now. And Tripoli, this is the biggest city. It's very calm.
Late Saturday night, the streets of Tripoli were in fact deserted. There were no demonstrators. One could see only pro-Gaddafi young men and militias, policemen and soldiers. After my 25 minutes with Gaddafi's son, our one-day visa had expired, and we had to drive directly back to the airport. Our 8 hours in downtown Tripoli, surprisingly calm, despite the ongoing conflict. Raymond St-Pierre, CBC News, Tripoli.
Well, there was nothing calm about Libya's border with Tunisia today. That's where our Adrian Arsenault reports from tonight.
Libya is losing its workers by the tens of thousands every day. This is the Tunisian side of the border. These are Egyptian laborers. Most say they tried to flee through Tripoli's airport, but no planes came for them, so they came here. Here is a mess. Ordinary Tunisians do their best to help, arriving in their own cars with food and water and bread. The UN High Commission for Refugees says it's never seen such a strong local response. This man is a yacht club worker who wanted to return the kindnesses the Arab world showed Tunisians.
There's thousands of refugees who need food.
Control at the border gets harder every hour as numbers swell. Humanitarian agencies trying to hold a news conference got interrupted by those angry with journalists. Just a distraction from the real problems here.
We're very worried, alarmed about the humanitarian situation, as people cross over the border.
The UN is trying to bring in enough tents to house 10,000 people, but many more are stranded. Luckier ones are under a roof, and that's not saying much.
When people come across the border, one of the great problems here is that they really don't have anywhere to go. This is sort of a warehouse. It has become where they sleep, and this is why this is really untenable at the border. This is not sustainable for very long. A lot of these men say they've been here for maybe 3 days now. There are absolutely no sanitation facilities here at all. There's very little food, very little water.
And they tell us they have little to no money, sometimes no documents, saying Libyan soldiers and African mercenaries robbed them. They took everything, he tells us, SIM cards, telephones, they didn't leave anything. Along the road for the border, a young man says Libyan soldiers burst into his home. They tied our arms and eyes and laid us on the ground, then they put their feet on our necks. The soldiers had a false tip he'd given footage of violence to TV stations. Safe now, but stuck waiting for help. And for all the Tunisian generosity, this country is worried. It has serious political problems of its own and can't cope with the refugee crisis. Adrienne Arsenault, CBC News on the Tunisian-Libyan border.
Another way out of Libya is by sea, and tens of thousands of people have made their way to the largest opposition-held city on the coast to escape, including some Canadians. Carolyn Dunn has that story from Benghazi.
Brother and sister Youssef and Ebtihal Mursal are among 28 Canadians safely on board a British Navy ship that left Libya today. It'll be a few more days before they reach home in Regina. But still not enough time to forget what they saw in Benghazi.
And suddenly there was like gun shooting everywhere. There was like a lot of ambulance noises. We didn't know where to go exactly because it was just randomly.
It's been very terrifying. On the 17th of February, I lost my cousin in this incident. He got shot in the chest, and his brother also got shot in the back, and he became paralyzed. So with two family members dropping, it's been really sad.
Khaled Walid is also trying to cope with what he's seen. He's among a group of volunteers poring over video and still images that captured the aftermath of Gaddafi's soldiers firing on their own people, trying to create a permanent archive of what they call atrocities.
I can't sleep because I've seen very brutal videos, very scenes. I can't describe it. So it's an awful feeling here.
Liberation Square is where many of the war wounded have come to gather. This woman hasn't spoken a word in days, not since two of her sons were shot to death while protesting.
She looking up to the sky. If we see her as she talking with her sons.
Abdullah Dawed sits in a wheelchair, his legs broken, his face disfigured. He says he was tortured by the Gaddafi regime while a political prisoner for his writings. They came at me with electrical sticks, he says. They beat me, electrocuted me, and tortured me every day for 5 days. Still, the people of this coastal city have shown remarkable resilience, and they say they'll use the same determination that saw them begin the Libyan revolution right here to see them through whatever lies ahead. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Benghazi, Libya.
Tonight, Prime Minister Stephen Harper insisted Ottawa is working to help stranded Canadians in Libya. He promised more rescue planes and immediate sanctions against Muammar Gaddafi. So why did he make the announcement tonight? Well, Hannah Thibodeau is in Ottawa with the answer. Hannah?
Wendy, government sources tell CBC News that the Gaddafi regime attempted to withdraw substantial amounts of money from several different Canadian institutions. Tonight, the Prime Minister took steps to ensure that didn't happen. Prime Minister Stephen Harper joined the United Nations and a number of Western countries in imposing sanctions against the Libyan regime. But Harper also went further.
Our government will impose an asset freeze on and a prohibition of financial transactions with the government of Libya, its institutions and agencies, including the Libyan Central Bank. These actions will help restrict the movement of and access to money and weapons for those responsible for violence against the Libyan people.
There was a concern that if the government didn't act tonight, the money would have been withdrawn by the morning. The sanction on any commercial transactions with Libya means that major Canadian companies like SNC-Lavalin and Suncor must cease all operations in that country and will not be able to restart those operations or sign any contracts until the sanctions are lifted. The government hasn't decided whether to endorse a no-fly zone or contribute to the humanitarian effort. Sources say all options remain on the table. Wendy.
Thanks, Hannah. Hannah Thibodeau.